Welcome to part 2 of Eating Smart for Your Heart. Today we'll be working to understand the fats in our diet, review the best fat choices, and go over sodium and processed foods. We went over calories, balance, and weight in class 1. And this is still important as we discuss fat. We want to reframe that fat is more calorie dense than carbohydrates and protein, but it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. It's just a fact we want you to remember. Staying within our calorie window helps us achieve and maintain a healthy weight. It's important to understand how dietary fat affects your lipid profile. The goal for triglycerides is to be less than 150 milligrams per deciliter. Triglycerides transport fat for energy use and storage, and they're found and manufactured in our bodies. These will increase with too many refined carbohydrates, alcohol, unhealthy fats, and excess calories in general. HDL, we have a goal of greater than 60 milligrams per deciliter. They transport cholesterol to the liver, recycling and eliminating that cholesterol. This is why HDL is dubbed the healthy or good cholesterol. You can increase this value with exercise and shifting to healthy fats in the diet. Total cholesterol, the goal is less than 200 or less than 180 if you're high risk. This makes hormones, bile, and vitamin D. And total cholesterol is the sum of your HDL plus your LDL plus 20% of your triglycerides. The LDL goal is less than 100 milligrams per deciliter or less than 70 if you're high risk. This carries most of the body's cholesterol. It deposits the cholesterol to these inner blood vessels, and it can increase with the consumption of unhealthy fats and excess weight, as well as not consuming enough fiber. When we look at fats, choosing the right type can impact our heart health, our inflammation, and our lipid profile, as we just learned. There are plant sources and animal sources of fat to consider, and we want to aim for about 15 to 35% of your total calories for the day. There are many functions of fat for health in the body. It is a great energy supply. It's a concentrated form of energy, though, at 9 calories per gram. And this doesn't mean that it's automatically less healthier than carbohydrates or proteins at 4 calories per gram, but you'll notice that the serving sizes are often much smaller. Fat can also increase satiety or that feeling of fullness, and this is due to the longer digestion period. So when you add fat to a meal through a little olive oil, avocado, maybe some nuts and seeds, you're going to feel that meal stick a little bit longer. Fat also helps with the absorption of vitamins A, D, E, and K. It helps insulate and pad our vital organs, and it also helps with brain development and function. Fat can also promote normal cell health and growth. There are 3 types of fat we're going to review today: trans fat, saturated fat, and unsaturated fats. In this first column, trans fats, we want to avoid these and aim for 0. Trans fats are a manufactured, man-made fat where they bubble hydrogen through a usually low-quality liquid oil. This hydrogen then grabs on to the available carbon bonds, which I know that's very chemistry-driven, but essentially it goes from a liquid oil to a solid saturated fat. But this manufactured type of fat is shown to cause inflammation and disrupt our lipid profile. They are found in a lot of processed foods, fried foods, coffee creamers, stick margarine, store-bought frosting. Manufacturers have to label how many trans fats are on the food label. Now, they can list it as 0 if it's 0.5 grams per serving or less. So always check the ingredients list and look for this word hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils. This means that there does contain trans fat in that food item, and you might want to look for an alternative. Saturated fats are naturally occurring fats from animal meats, fat found in dairy, and our tropical oils. We want to limit these. We can handle some, but not a lot. And these are thick or solid at room temperature. Coconut oil is often a topic of discussion when it comes to saturated fats. Yes, that is a saturated fat, but you do see sometimes that there are health benefits because it's a shorter chain saturated fat. We still want to limit the amount of coconut oil that we have in the diet and focus mostly on consuming unsaturated fats. You might see these listed as polyunsaturated or monounsaturated fatty acids. That's where the acronym PUFA, PUFA, and MUFA comes from. But as a category, unsaturated fats are your most heart healthy. These are mostly from plant sources and they are liquid at room temperature or they're found as oils. We want to limit saturated fat, and this is so we can help reduce our LDL and our triglycerides. Saturated fat is found in the animal meats, in the trim, that marbling, or the skin of poultry. Red or darker meats tend to have higher saturated fat profiles than white meats. In our dairy products, our full fat milk, cream, butter, and cheeses, as well as our tropical oils like cocoa butter, coconut oil, palm kernel oil. And then the animal meats and these palm oils are most associated with a higher LDL. So keep in mind that some foods have saturated fat that's naturally occurring, like those animal meats. Other foods have saturated fat that's added in production, like baked goods, sometimes chips or cookies or crackers. It just kind of depends on how that product is made. So always check the label to see how much saturated fat is in your item per serving. So how much saturated fat should you aim for per day? We want to look at about 5 to 7% of total calories. And we'll get to numbers on the next slide here. But an example of this is 1 tablespoon of butter provides 7 grams of saturated fat. So it's good to kind of keep that in mind as we talk more about the numbers. And the goal here is to shift. So let's look at the numbers and then get into unsaturated fats. So how much saturated fat is 5 to 7 calories? We've got some calorie levels here from 1400 to 2400. And in the green columns, you'll see how many grams of fat would 25% of the diet be, 30% of calories from fat, 35% of calories from fat. This is total fat. So broken out from there, at that 6% calories from fat for each of those calorie levels, we've got about 9 grams of saturated fat would be the goal if you're aiming for about 1,400 calories. 16 grams would be the goal if you're aiming for about 2,400 calories. So it kind of depends on your energy need, how many grams of saturated fat you're going to aim to be under each day. But this helps frame it so you can kind of get a good idea of how much saturated fat compared to the total fat for your day. So we have a comparison here of fats and oils. So often we cook with oils, we might make a vinaigrette, and you can see here that the makeup of these saturated or these dietary fats can be quite different. The red is saturated and the blue, orange, and yellow are all derived from unsaturated fats. So you can see that canola oil has the least amount of saturated fat. That is a processed oil, and we'll learn more about oils in the grocery shopping section, but we always like to recommend oils be, not refined. So they'll be expeller pressed or cold pressed, like an extra virgin olive oil or an expeller pressed avocado oil. It's not to say it's bad for you, but the quality is a little bit higher. Now, what we want to limit is our palm oil, lard, that cottonseed oil. See, we're getting up to, a higher percentage of saturated fats here, and coconut oil at the highest percentage of saturated fat. As we've already discussed, coconut oil does have a short chain saturated fat. It is metabolized a little bit differently, but that doesn't mean we want to go, have a free-for-all with coconut oil. You could use it in small amounts, but for the most part, we want to prioritize cold or expeller pressed oils. Olive oil is definitely a great choice in this section. So choosing healthier sources of fats, this can help us increase our HDL. And we want to look at the mono and poly unsaturated fats. With the oils, you'll find canola, olive, peanut, and almond. And of course, quality matters here. So do try to look for cold and expeller pressed. We've got nuts like almonds, macadamia nuts, pecans, pistachios, peanuts, hazelnuts, and any of those natural nut butters where they're kind of ground up almonds, ground up peanuts. That's, a nut butter is a great way to incorporate that into your diet as well. And of course, there's also avocados. With our polyunsaturated fats, we have some different oils, corn, safflower, soybean, and sunflower oil. Again, Aim for cold pressed or expeller pressed. There's nuts, almonds, pecans, and walnuts all have those polyunsaturated fats as well. And then this is where we're going to find those omega-3 food sources, like from our seafood, salmon, tuna, and sardines, and some of our oils, flaxseed, and walnuts. Now, some people might be allergic to nuts or really opposed to eating fish. If you do want to get your omega-3, intake up, you definitely want to start, talking to your doctor first about an omega-3 supplement, fish oil, and any sort of walnut or grapeseed oil supplement. Due to a little bit of a blood thinning effect, we just want to make sure it's safe for you to do so. So don't start a supplement without discussing it with your doctor. But if you're able to include, these healthy fats, especially as a replacement for the saturated fats, that will definitely be a better profile for your dietary fat choices. So here are some ways that you could make those swaps. Instead of going for prime rib, doing a baked salmon. Instead of whole milk, going low fat or skim. Instead of butter on like a piece of whole grain toast, you could do avocado, or if you're cooking with butter, you could do avocado oil or olive oil. Instead of French fries, doing roasted potatoes. Instead of brie cheese, doing sliced avocado. Going from milk chocolate to dark chocolate. Instead of ranch dressing, which might have that saturated fat present, try an oil-based vinaigrette, and even better, make your own. Shake it up with some vinegar and some herbs and lemon at home. And then instead of cream cheese, try in a natural nut butter. Now, this is not to say you can never ever have these foods that are higher in saturated fat, but be aware of how much you're consuming throughout the day and see where you could make swaps where you still enjoy your food and the taste of that food, but you're changing the fat profile so you're consuming more unsaturated fats. We're shifting gears a little bit to salt. So when we look at sodium, right, we have these limits of sodium, and we need to understand that 1 teaspoon of table salt or sea salt provides about 2,300 milligrams of sodium. And this amount will be over what we're recommending for a heart-healthy diet. In general, salt that we add at home or from the salt shaker adds only about 15% of our total daily sodium consumed. The rest comes from foods that are processed, eaten outside the home, so at a restaurant, or added in the factory, where that food is cooked. So when we look at too much salt, why do we care? Why do we need to focus on sodium? Too much salt can raise your blood pressure. It can also put that extra stress on your heart, and it can lead to stroke, kidney disease, heart failure, and possibly even increase the risk of certain cancers. And most Americans eat somewhere around 3,400 milligrams of sodium daily. And this is definitely over the recommended limit. So we want a balanced diet of fresh foods, including all food groups. And if we're easing off of dining out and processed foods, we can be under these values. So the recommendation is to have no more than 2,300 milligrams per day of sodium for most adults. And the general recommendation too is if somebody is at risk for heart disease, has diabetes, has high blood pressure, chronic kidney disease, or if they're over 51, the goal is more like 1,500 milligrams per day. So as you flip over that food label, check the salt that are in your food items. This can help you frame, where you're at as far as salt consumption goes. So looking at some sodium in foods, the blue columns here compare some fresh foods, milk, yogurt, vegetables, and fruits. Sodium is found in our soil. It's found in our animal products and even in our own body. We want to have these sodium levels, right? We just don't want them to be out of balance or to eat a diet so high in sodium that it forces our body to constantly retain water to balance it out. That's why it's harder on our heart and our kidneys. So if you look at these fresh foods, the highest one down here, which cereal is a bit of a processed food, but the highest there is 360 milligrams. Pop over to the green columns. We've got some incredibly high numbers here at the bottom, right, where if you purchase a Reuben and French fries out, it could be as high as 6,000 milligrams. A Burger King crispy chicken sandwich has almost 2,000 milligrams. So when we're relying on processed foods, processed condiments, and dining out, especially with fast food, the sodium numbers add up. So this is about being aware and intentional about how much sodium you're consuming in your diet. On the food label, you'll see sodium listed right under cholesterol, and the percent daily value is based on a 2,000 calorie diet with the recommended 2,300 milligrams of sodium. You might need less than this, so focus on just the number and understanding how much sodium you need for your day rather than that purple column where it shows the percent daily value. You'll see food items kind of touting different label claims on the front of their label. If you see reduced sodium, this means that it's 25% less sodium than the original product. If it says low sodium or low salt, this means there's less than 140 milligrams per serving. So notice that reduced sodium is just less than the original. So if the original had 1,000 milligrams, it could say reduced sodium and still have 750 milligrams. So check your numbers and check the label. Low sodium and no sodium relate to specific number values. If it says no sodium, there's less than 5 milligrams of sodium per serving. Some tips to reduce sodium is, limit or don't add salt on foods or in recipes. There are many ways that we can ramp up the flavor through spices, herbs, garlic, ginger, even onions and leeks. And eating fresh like this can not only raise our nutrient value, but it can also make those healthy foods and healthy eating more fun. So try to experiment with some spices, herbs, aromatics like garlic and onion, and play with different flavor profiles as you cook. So looking at reducing sodium, some people ask about salt substitutes. These may need to be avoided because they are based on a potassium chloride. So you don't want to switch to something like new salt until you talk to your doctor and make sure that that's not going to be an issue for you. We want to aim for a meal plan with mostly single ingredient foods, and we want to explore how to do a little do it yourself. And so if there's a favorite restaurant food or a convenience item, there's typically a way to problem solve and make something similar. If you're used to canned soups, can you make a homemade soup with a salt-free broth or stock? If you love jarred pickles, can you do fresh cucumbers and a dill dip? Or you could do a quick pickle on your fresh cucumbers at home in a bowl in the fridge. They'll be ready in 30 minutes with vinegar, water, garlic cloves, and peppercorns. If you're used to salty snacks, can you try unbaked or unsalted or baked snacks, or switch to fresh produce and hummus? Something crunchy that still has a lot of, fresh kind of taste, but you're still getting that crunch and snacky, scratching that snacky itch. There's also these pre-seasoned powdered mixes like taco seasoning or ranch dressing mix. See how you can explore herbs, spices, and salt-free blends. There's certain brands at the store that are all salt-free, or you can make your own combinations. But learning about different flavor profiles of cuisines that you like, whether it's Caribbean, Thai, Greek, Italian, see what kind of spices and herbs they use and explore with those. If you love smoked cured meats or fish, you can try fresh meat or fish with herbs, spices, and especially lemon, especially with that seafood. And then if you like savory frozen meals, trying ones that are low sodium, but also cut it and add your extra veggies or your salt-free beans on your own so that you're adding more nutrition without adding more salt. Let's review some HeartSmart application tips for improving your fat quality and reducing your sodium intake. For fat quality, we can swap out cheese, creamy dressings, and butter for hummus, avocado, and even a DIY vinaigrette. When you can shake up your own vinaigrette with olive oil, a little bit of vinegar, and some fresh or dried herbs, and a little squeeze of lemon or some diced garlic, you can get a lot of flavor and a really good fat profile, and it's salt-free. You can also keep nuts and seeds on hand to easily sprinkle those on oatmeal, parfaits, salads, even stir fries, or have them as a healthy snack. To reduce your sodium, try to plan your DIY lunches from home, whether it's a beanie grainy salad or some easy wraps with some lean cooked chicken and avocado and lots of veggies. When we plan our own lunch, it can help limit our sodium by not dining out and grabbing to-go food. You can also flavor your own whole grains from your spice cabinet. I love cooking a farro or a long grain brown rice and adding dried dill, garlic, and lemon juice for a Greek take on that whole grain. You can also switch to fresh and plant-based protein sources. Many times our cured or processed proteins or even our frozen proteins can have added sodium. So aim to improve that, and you will also be improving that sodium intake for your day. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to schedule an individual consult with our registered dietitian. The scheduling line is 616-885-5000.